Good morning, everyone. It is Professor Ananka, and today we are going to be starting a new segment on the channel where we go through and read declassified CIA documents. Today, we are going to be starting with Project Sunstreak, which was the progenitor to Project Stargate, which is a CIA and government-funded project focused on ESP, telepathy, remote viewing, and other psychic abilities. Now, if you type in Project Sunstreak, these will be the first two documents to come up. The first titled Sunstreak by the George Washington University, and the other directly from the CIA website. Now, these are both actually the same document, as I'll go through and show you. As you can see, Defense Intelligence Agency, Project Sunstreak. And if you go back and you go to the CIA website, it is actually the exact same document, as you can see on the screen. So we're going to go through, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you guys can read along with me. But all right, let's begin. Good morning, afternoon. I would like to present a brief overview of the Project Sunstreak, giving a few points of its historical background, definitions of its basic words, and explanations of what is accomplished by our project. This briefing and the information it contains is classified secret, special access information. Defense Intelligence Agency, DTS, presents a brief overview of Project Sunstreak. Psychoenergetics. Project Sunstreak deals with the use of psychoenergetics in the collection of intelligence information. Psychoenergetics is defined as shown here and is broadly subdivided into two classes. Number 1, mental effects on the physical world, and number 2, purely mental collection of information. Psychoenergetics is defined as the process by which an individual may psychically interact with objects, locations, organisms, or events. Number 1, psychokinesis, physical actions performed by mental powers. And number 2, ESP, telepathy, and remote viewing, perceptions which cannot be explained by known sensory means. Since the early 1970s, the Department of Defense has been involved in examining potential uses of psychoenergetics. Experiments using remote viewing as an intelligence gathering tool, conducted by two laser physicists, Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ at Stanford Research Institute, or SRI, proved successful. 1970s early attempts by DoD used experienced experimenters Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ for researching remote viewing. Remote viewing is an SRI-coined term. The definition is shown here. Remote viewing is defined as the acquisition and description by mental means of information blocked from ordinary perception by distance, shielding, or time. Now keep in mind, I always find this is a very interesting word that they added, time, meaning not only are they using remote viewing to gain information from, let's say I'm sitting in my room in America and they want me to spy on someone in Russia, but also through time, so somehow they can use remote viewing to look back or forwards into time. Using several apparently gifted psychic subjects, the most notable of whom were Pat Price and Ingo Swann, SRI scientists conducted several CIA-sponsored remote viewing tests, and Ingo Swann has plenty of books that you can go read. You can go research him. As you can see, it's just relisting the names of the experimenters and the subjects. Psychic impressions included much detailed, accurate information, some of which was previously unreported, about redacted, SG-1A. These psychic impressions were confirmed by human and national technical sources. gained detailed information about Soviet research and development facility at Semipalatinsk. As a result of these original tests, emphasis over the last decade has centered on remote viewing rather than on other aspects of parapsychology, such as mental telepathy, ESP, or psychokinesis. Remote viewing, a term conceived at SRI, the Stanford Research Institute, and adopted as the method preferred over other methods such as mental telepathy, ESP, and psychokinesis. DIA and the military services have all at one time or another been involved in numerous psychoenergetics tests, most of them being applications-oriented. In 1972, for example, the U.S. Army Surgeon General, through the Medical Intelligence Information Agency, now known as the Armed Forces Medical Intelligence Agency, AFMIC, together with DIA, published studies of Soviet bloc work in psychoenergetics. In 1976, the Missile Intelligence Agency informally expressed interest in the U.S. replication of claimed Soviet experiments in psychokinesis. Now keep in mind they had started this because originally, I believe, it was in China and Russia that had first started doing these experiments, and since they had very high success rates, it got America interested. And as you can see, at the bottom of all these pages is just a little bullet point, which basically gives you a time and the general outline of what we have just read above, so I won't waste time reading most of them. SRI developed a small program for them, and in 1977, the Missile Intelligence Agency awarded SRI a one-year research and development contract. During the same time, the Army Materials Systems Analysis Agency was involved in the investigation of remote viewing concepts with SRI. Also in 1977, the U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command, INSCOM, established a project team under the Assistant Deputy Chief of Staff for Human Intelligence and implemented the Gondola Wish program, which is another file I will be reading in a separate video for Project Gondola Wish. The purpose of the Gondola Wish program is shown here. Purpose: to integrate the Soviet and Eastern psychoenergetic intelligence collection threat into the all-source operations, OPSCO, support scenario. Location: Fort Meade, Maryland. In 1978, the Army ACSI concluded that there was sufficient evidence to warrant the development of a comprehensive program to explore intelligence collection applications of psychoenergetics. The Army ACSI canceled the Gondola Wish effort, placed a complete security envelope over the Army's interest in psychoenergetics, and implemented a new program directed towards intelligence collection using remote viewing. And this is also when they started Project Grill Flame, which is another document I will be reading to you in a separate video. This new effort was given the unclassified name, Grill Flame. Purpose: to use remote viewing as a collection method, and this was also located in Fort Meade, Maryland. By the spring of 1978, INSCOM project personnel had been selected and training was initiated. The next concern, however, was whether or not information obtained from remote viewing would be of reasonable accuracy. Even if so, would the information be accepted and used by the intelligence community? Work to answer these questions was overcome by events. On September 4th, 1979, ACSI tasked INSCOM to locate a missing Navy aircraft. Hence, the first INSCOM Grill Flame Operation remote viewing session took place. In this initial session, the remote viewer located the missing aircraft within 15 miles of where it had crashed. Now keep in mind, this is the first test they did for Project Grill Flame, and it was successful within 15 miles. Based on these results, INSCOM was tasked to work against additional operational targets. These tasking forced a premature halt to the initial training phases, and by December 1979, the project was committed to operations. Redacted. Because of this, an independent investigative committee was formed to review such activities. This committee was known as the Gale Committee. A final report was issued in December 1979. Some of the important findings of the Gale Committee are shown here. To continue operational activities to determine the value of remote viewing for intel collection. To follow psychoenergetic threats from foreign sources. And to establish a central DoD authority to fund and monitor a psychoenergetic program. Several months later, Dr. William Perry, Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering, having been advised of the DoD psychoenergetic activities and the Gale Committee's findings, issued a 5th of March 1980 memorandum. This memorandum terminated research and development P6 funding for psychoenergetics activities, but posed no objections to the continuance of intelligence applications efforts, P3. In February 1981, ACSI transferred Project Grill Flame management to INSCOM. As a result of the Gale Committee findings and the Perry Memorandum, in March 1981, the Director DIA and the Army ACSI signed a joint Grill Flame MOU. The effort formed between DIA and the Army was to implement a 3-year comprehensive program designed to do the following. Within this program, the roles of DIA and the Army were distinct. For the DIA, it was threat, countermeasures, using established physics, and primarily through SRI contracts. And for the U.S. Army, INSCOM, to apply remote viewing program, use assigned personnel, and contract to enhance capability. This MOU also formalized the cooperation among active Grill Flame players other than the DIA and INSCOM, including the Secretary of the Army General Counsel, the Assistant Surgeon General for Medical Research and Development, Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, the NSA, the CIA, the Navy, and redacted. This joint services effort continued until December 1982, when the Budget Subcommittee of the Senate Select Committee of Intelligence curtailed all psychoenergetic operational activities by INSCOM in the National Foreign Intelligence Program, NFIP. The committee was apparently under the misconception that the project was double funded, having noted that there were 2 line items entries in the budget, one for DIA and one for INSCOM. The congressional conferees agreed, however, to let DIA complete the 3rd year of their effort, but directed that future funding in any of psychoenergetic activity be budgeted outside the NFIP, since the DIA efforts seemed to them to be research and defense oriented. In keeping with congressional desires, INSCOM terminated formal involvement with GrillFlame at the end of 1982, but maintained its momentum of effort by the direction of the CG, INSCOM, under a special access program called Center Lane, funded with S&IA monies. In January 1983, Dr. Richard DeLauer, the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering, signed a memorandum allowing P6 resources to be used to maintain and support the Center Lane program, thus reversing the Perry Memorandum of 1980. Project Center Lane, formed at the end of 1982, funding provided with security and investigative activities, money, and the Perry Memorandum was reversed on January 1983. On October 19, 1983, DIA published the results of their 3-year psychoenergetic evaluation effort. There were several key recommendations that resulted from the 3-year GrillFlame effort, as shown here. These findings and recommendations were supported by an independent science review panel. Redacted. In August 1984, the decision was made to make the operational activities of INCOM's remote viewing unit more responsive to strategic national-level tasking. In order to do this, it would be necessary to transfer the unit to DIA. On September 18, 1984, an MOA between DIA and INSCOM for Project Center Lane's transfer was completed. By February 1985, the initial steps were underway to transfer Center Lane to DIA as a DoD Special Access Program. During the same time period, Congress was being briefed on the DIA plan to form a collection activity based on more than 10 years of government-sponsored research and DIA's own 3-year GrillFlame effort, with the understanding that it was DIA's intent to conduct an intelligence collection program and not a research and development effort. The Senate restored NFIP funding for intelligence applications for FY86 and beyond. As a separate issue, DoD is also conducting a moderate research and development effort through USA MRDC, which has PA6 funding from Director, Research and Engineering. The DoD/DIA psychoenergetic collection effort is now called Sunstreak, and the mission of Sunstreak is shown here. Project Sunstreak. Purpose: to undertake operational intelligence applications using an aspect of psychoenergetics known as remote viewing. Project Sunstreak facilities and activities are located at Fort Meade, Maryland, approximately halfway between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, Maryland. And here you can see on the map where it's located. Remote viewing is a highly controlled and formally established, unique intelligence collection capability which has the following characteristics. It is passive. To the extent of our knowledge, collection by remote viewing is totally passive. That is to say, it cannot be detected when used. Only one scientific claim of detection of remote viewing is known. Chinese scientists claim to have detected remote viewing during their experiments with children. Data on these experiments is insufficient to validate this claim. Work to replicate these experiments, however, is ongoing at SRI. Remote viewing is inexpensive. The principal cost of remote viewing collection is the people involved. There is little expensive hardware, since, for the most part, the people themselves are the equipment. There is no known defense. time, distance, target size, or degree of difficulty all have no apparent effect on collection by remote viewing. Even conceptualized plans have been collected against prior to their actual implementation. Remote viewing has been successfully used against 7 categories of tasking. 2 of these categories, penetration of inaccessible targets and the queuing of their intelligence collection systems, are used predominantly at this time. 2 others, human source assessments and accurate personality profiles, presently lack a satisfactory database for effective exploitation. Penetration of inaccessible targets. These are the 7 tasking categories. Penetration of inaccessible targets, science and technology information, queuing of other intelligence collection systems, imminent hostilities, determination of nuclear from non-nuclear targets, human source assessments, and accurate personality profiles. An integral part of the mission of Sunstreak involves training professional intelligence personnel to remote view. In 1979, INSCOM integrated the SRI contracted orientation technology into their in-house program, where it is still in use today for new personnel. Training developed from the practical application of state-of-the-art psychoenergetic technology drawn from academic institutions, scientific laboratories, and research establishments around the world. An eclectic approach was taken, using those methods which had application potential for operational requirements. Trainings were practical exercises, lectures, literature review, observations of others, and practical training, sessions conducted against training targets. In the 1970s, the consensus was that the remote viewing process seemed to be facilitated by physical relaxation and enhanced internal attention, or paying attention to one's own mental imagery and impressions. This conceptualized ideal state became the basis for a type of remote viewing now called extended remote viewing, or ERV. ERV is a system whereby the remote viewer prepares through a method of deep relaxation and focused attention. In mid-1982, a new training program began in coordinate remote viewing, CRV with SRI. This new process, developed by Ingo Swan, an SRI subcontractor, subdivides the detection and decoding of psychic impressions into discrete, achievable skill levels known as stages 1 through 6. The process usually begins by presenting the remote viewing source with geographic coordinates, hence the name coordinate remote viewing. The next part of the briefing will discuss what actually occurs in response to a tasking requirement for Sunstreak information. Typically, a project begins with a request for information on a target from a requesting agency. The first task is the construction of a remote viewing collection plan. The collection plan lists the essential elements of information and the intelligence indicators which will address these EEI. Also listed are the target time windows for which these indicators will be relevant. The collection plan also indicates which remote viewing technique or whether a combination of techniques will be used. Remote viewers are selected on the basis of their past performance on the type of indicators which are needed for a particular project. Several sessions or interviews may have been done to address all the indicators needed to answer the EEI. A remote viewing session is a team effort. The team consists of the interviewer or monitor and the remote viewer. The ERV interviewer's job is to keep the remote viewer on track, to direct the focus of the remote viewer, and to elicit information about the target. The CRV monitor's job is to control and supervise the structure of the remote viewing session. The remote viewer is responsible for reporting impressions, concepts, ideas, sensations, feelings, and notions of the target. The goal of the session is to collect information of intelligence value. To do this, great care is taken to try and encourage the remote viewer to produce only psychic information of intelligence value and not an analytic opinion. When the remote viewing session is completed, it is fully documented and a report is furnished to the requesting agency. After the project is completed, the requester provides an evaluation. As with any other intelligence sources, an evaluation is essential. The remote viewer wishes to know if he did well in his efforts. This helps him in future projects, as well as establishing a sense of worth in his efforts to remote view. It also provides us with a growing database on each remote viewer's success rate for enhancement of further tasking. This has been a brief overview of Project Sunstreak, a psychoenergetics program under the auspices of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Let me caution you again that the information contained in this briefing has been classified secret and is compartmented special access information.